Hello and welcome to another episode of News from the Gelding. Okay, today I've got a short review of a book called The Inverted World. It's an amazing science fiction book, one of my favorites, and I'll be doing a short piece on that. Not really kind of a review, but there's not too much I can give away because it'll spoil the whole story. So if you want to go to there, go straight to here, and I'll be with you shortly. Otherwise, stick around and I've got various other bits of news that I normally cover, including Slug Watch. Okay, see you in a bit. Hello and welcome back. Okay, so this week has been half term for the school that I do the driving for. So I've had a week off. Now, the idea was that I would get a fair bit of work done on my upcoming book, but that hasn't happened. I've done nothing on it at all. But other than that, I have done some other things here and there. First thing is I started a home brew going, an IPA, 40 pints, currently bubbling away in the bedroom. Going to make that for Christmas, so should be quite nice by then, I hope. If you fancy coming round for a pint, just let me know and you can help yourself. Right, what else? I've also done a bit of culling of my bookshelf. I've taken around 20 books out of there. These are books that I've either read and I didn't really like, or they're ones that I don't really think I ever will read. So I'm gonna. There's a book charity in Exeter and called Recycle, and I'm going to give them all of those. Okay, then it's got to be some Slug news, I think. Okay, right. So on the last week when I did my last video, there was some Slug action that evening. The first one was this little blighter. I saw him by the door of my studio, but he was already escaping or leaving the studio behind, so I decided to leave him be. I think he knew that he had already outstayed his welcome. A bit later, however, there was this great big beast that we found in the kitchen, slithering all over a cheese knife. Okay, I took a little video, so you can watch that now and see what's going on. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, right, so not very pleasant and quite large. Getting some very large slugs. Not quite sure what variety of slug these are, but they're great big things. And if I bring up the video again, I've zoomed it in, you can see these tiny little things moving over the slug. I looked this up before, and there's a type of mite that lives on slugs, and this one's pickled in them. You can only see a couple in this video, I think. God knows what they get up to on the slug, but Yeah, they seem quite happy there. So yes, there we are, Slug News. Next thing to do will be to set up a camera and see where they're coming from. Pretty sure they're coming from the door of my studio, but I'll try and do that next and see where we go with that. Okay, so Slug News out of the way. Right, let's get down to the main business of this video. Well, not quite. Well, yes. So I've said before I might do book reviews as and when I've read a book, and if it's a good one, I'll talk about it. I'm not going to be slagging off other books. If I don't like a book, I'm not going to tell you about it. But I don't think that would be fair. But I think it's nice to recommend books. So all I'll do is I'll recommend books, ones that I like and ones that I think you might like if you're interested in kind of things I'm interested in, fantasy and science fiction. Well, I don't just read those genres. I read outside of that as well. So whatever I'm reading, if I think it's worth reading, I'll tell you about it. Yeah. So in the coming week, I'm hoping to get right back into working on my own book. So that's going to be. I'm going to change the way I do things. I'm hoping to start waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, working for a couple of hours, doing my job for 3 hours, doing the driving, and then another 3 hours of work on my book, and then get back to driving again, because I'm not progressing fast enough for my liking. That's the plan anyway. Well, the clock's going back on Sunday. I shouldn't feel the time difference quite so much because I normally get up at 6 anyway, so it shouldn't be too bad if I get into that habit. Anyway, okay, book review. So this one is called The Inverted World by Christopher Priest. I think it was 1974 this was published. I'm going to put up a few different covers here. It's been reprinted quite a number of times. Some really nice covers, some of them better than others. And the one I've got is the last one that I'll show you, which doesn't actually describe much about the story. The others have kind of clues about what's going on, whereas this one just shows the city. So anyway, the story, the first line in the book begins with, "I had reached the age of 650 miles. So already you know something quite strange is going on. Time isn't measured by days and weeks and months and years, but rather distance. So the protagonist is called Helwood Mann, and he lives on a city that is in motion. It's on train tracks. So it's constantly moving through a landscape. Now, when I heard about this book, that's all I knew about it. I knew it was about a city moving through a landscape on rails, and I thought that in itself was quite an interesting idea. And why the hell would that be happening? Well, the reasons for this happening are quite extraordinary. And I have to be careful about how much I tell you here because it will spoil the book. What I will say is something about what you discover fairly early on, is that the world that they're passing through is quite strange, the way the natural order of things works, the notion of time and space. The city itself is called Earth. And they are from Earth. So it's quite a strange thing, but they believe that they're on an alien world or another universe. Anyway, what you discover soon on is that in our world or in our universe, we live in what we believe to be an infinitely large universe, but we live in finite worlds, parts of it that are determined, they have a definite size. Whereas the universe in which this book exists is finite. It has a specific size, but all of the bodies that are within it are infinite. So this means that the sun, the moon, and the earth are infinite shapes. Now this is very odd in itself, and it means that a certain shape is used, it's referred to as a hyperbola or a pseudosphere. I'll put a picture here. So this is what an object would look like if it was infinite, an infinite object. So you have a spire at the top and the bottom, and around the middle of the disk, this also is infinite, has an infinite dimension. If we take just the top of the pseudosphere, it looks like a great big trumpet. And so where this train with this city on tracks exists is at the optimum point in which the infinite coincides with the finite. So I'm not explaining this very well, but so the laws of physics are roughly the same at the optimum point. So they have to stay at that 45-degree angle on that hyperbola. If they go any further north of it, things become quite different in terms of the dimensions of the land and the passage of time. I'm not going to say too much about that either, because that has quite a lot of bearing on the story itself. But if you go any further south of it, you start heading towards the other infinite plane, where the land all spreads out infinitely. It's quite a scary idea, a prospect really, that a place could differ so much from what we know and experience. I've had waking nightmares in the past, when I was a teenager actually, of this kind of idea of something that is impossible. And in that dream, become stuck within that idea of something that's infinitely large or infinitely small. And I used to wake up screaming. I know my brother Kirk had the same thing. And so this story resonated with me because it was such an amazing, the danger that's implied within this story is so incredible and so hard to understand, that it was quite profound really. But anyway, I won't say too much more about it other than that I would highly recommend it. I think in the top 5 books I've ever read, especially in science fiction, this is one of the best. I think it's brilliant. I've just read it for the second time actually, and it was just as good reading it for the second time. So yeah, get on that if you like a good science fiction story. Even if you don't like science fiction, it's pretty interesting. Okay, but keep that shape in mind, the hyperbola. You need an idea of what that looks like really to appreciate the story. Anyway, right. Okay, if you've watched this far, and you're not one of my regular viewers, I do have my own book out, so here it is. If you fancy reading a bit of fantasy, something new, give it a go. But from my analytics, I can see that very few people ever make it this far, so I'm talking to no one probably. Anyway, right, better say goodbye. Next week I may have somebody to show, you never know. I'm going to start sketching ideas for the second cover illustration. As I said before, I'm not going to work too in depth on these sketches. I'm just going to get the bare bones of a sketch, stick it on a canvas and start painting. That's the idea. But I'll show you some of those sketches hopefully. Okay, better go. Cheerio.